What's up, guys? Dylan here, and I'm here for another top 10 list. This is one I want to do. A lot of people have their list for this when it comes to wrestling or any other sport for that matter. This is my top 10 list of my all time favorites. And for each one, I will include a match that I think is the best. And I have three honorable mentions. First honorable mention is a fantastic talent who has worked in ECW, WCW, WWE, and even Impact Wrestling. Raven. There's so much I could say about the Raven character, the cult gimmick. What about me? What about Raven? He took a line from Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven, quote the Raven, nevermore. He was he had a mind for storyline. And from what I've heard from other wrestlers, he will talk your ear off. And from also what I've heard, he loves talking about the business. You know, I've seen his shoot interviews. I think he's somebody I could easily just sit and talk with about the business for hours. Um, some of my favorite storyline work he's done in ECW when he was feuding with the Sandman. I don't know if it was 100% Paul Heyman or if it was partly Raven and Sandman had something to do with it, but it was Raven doing the cult gimmick. And Sandman's wife, who in storyline was his ex-wife, has been known as in her ring name as Peaches, real name Lori Fullington, became in storyline she was with Raven, dating Raven. And along with her came the Sandman's real. They put Sandman's real 8-year-old son Tyler in this storyline. He was on TV, in the promos and everything. And there was certain spots like where Tyler, dressed like Raven, kisses Raven on the cheek and says, "I love you more than my own daddy." And then you see Sandman break down and cry. And he said it was real tears because he got in the moment. And it was just amazing. Pure emotion in it. And then, of course, Tyler was there on the infamous night where Raven and the Blue World Order, Stevie Richards and Blue Meanie, decided to crucify the Sandman, which actually kept Kurt Angle from coming into ECW back in '97, I believe, maybe late '96. It was after he won the gold medals, and they put Sandman on a cross haphazardly. I mean, it wouldn't stand up, and instead of a crown of thorns, they did a crown of barbed wire on his head. And it seems like Kurt Angle and maybe a couple other people were the only ones really offended. Sandman had no problem. You know, there were fans that were there that night who, in interviews, said they really didn't have a problem with it. They were just shocked that they actually did it. Not shocked and mad, but just shocked that they actually went to that length for a storyline. Because even though it was religious iconography, it wasn't in a religious way. But it did cause a lot of problems. Kurt Angle has actually said on the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD that when come up about this topic, he said he went up to Paul Heyman and said, "I'm leaving. I want you to send me my check, and if my name or my face is anywhere on TV with that crucifixion, you'll be hearing from my attorney." And everybody knows Kurt Angle is a Christian, pretty devout. Personally, me, I don't find it offensive. They didn't go all the way with it. Like, if they really wanted to go all the way with it, they would have, put spikes through his hands and stuff like that, or something to that effect. There's companies now that probably would do it, like CZW. Don't go look them up. It's gruesome. It's way more gruesome than need be. I mean, they're not extreme. They're not hardcore. They're what they call themselves, ultraviolet. Yeah, I'd say that is true, and it's sickening, to be honest, how far they go. But yeah, I don't find it offensive. But my favorite Raven match, I would have to say, is still in that Sandman. No, my favorite Raven match was his last match in ECW against longtime rival Tommy Dreamer, which they had a great program going on. The storyline was that they went to summer camp together as kids. And Dreamer was the jock, Raven was the outcast, and that's when Beulah came in, and they said that she went to that same summer camp. She used to be a like a ugly fat girl that was in a Dreamer. He turned her down, and then she became a penthouse model, Playboy Playmate, whatever. It sounds stupid, but the way they did it, it was perfect. And up until Raven's last night in ECW, that match that I'm telling you about against him and Dreamer, Dreamer never beat him. For 4 or 5 years, Dreamer never beat Raven until that night. And the only reason he beat Raven is because Raven was leaving to go to WCW. That's the best match. I believe it's WrestlePalooza 97? 98? No, not 98. It's got to be 97. 3 years. 95, 96, 97. But it's a great match. It does get a little extreme, but not overly over the top where it's just gratuitous violence. So Raven's my first honorable mention. I know I'm rambling on this, and I'm not even cracked top 10. Second honorable mention is Bruiser Brody. Now, you want to talk violent. This is one of the guys that inspired Mick Foley, who, if you don't know the name Mick Foley, you would know Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love. Basically, it's the guy that Undertaker threw off the Hell in a Cell back in 1998 at King of the Ring, and then threw him through the cell in the same night. Bruiser Brody's one of the guys that inspired Mick. This guy was nuts. And I mean nuts. If you want to see how violent he can get, go, this is right where I'm recommending the match. Anything when it was him against Abdullah the Butcher. Those two guys practically killed each other in the ring every night, working in world class in Texas back in the 70s. But the reason I like Brody is not just because it's not the madman thing where it's, I think every match he had was bloodier than hell, but it's the gimmick and how well he sold it and how well it looked. And also, he could work when need be. When he, but I also like the attitude from what I've heard. If he don't want to put you over, you weren't going over. If you pissed him off, he was going to shoot on you. He was going to hurt you. Story comes to mind that I've heard about was supposed to be him and Lex Luger in a steel cage. Lex Luger, Brody's in the corner. Luger's punching himself out. Brody, I guess, finally has enough, kicks him. Luger gets scared, climbs out the cage, leaves, goes home. Scared to death of Brody. Thinks Brody's going to kill him. And from what I've seen, if Brody wanted to kill you, he'd have killed him. There would be no Lex Luger around. And with all respect to Lex Luger, I do like Lex. But, sorry. That wasn't going to happen. You got scared of Brody. Understandable. He was intimidating as hell, and unfortunately, Bruiser Brody's no longer with us, thanks to another wrestler down in Puerto Rico. I believe his name's Jose Gonzalez, one of the Invaders. He was known as the Invader, and there's different stories about what exactly over, but basically, Gonzalez lured Brody into the shower of the locker room in Puerto Rico and stabbed him and killed him. So rest in peace to Brody. Wish you were still around. Maybe we could show some of these idiot wrestlers that like to wrestle blow up dolls and broomsticks and little kids how to really work in a ring. My third honorable mention has to be, it's an unpopular opinion that he's not in the top 10, but Shawn Michaels. He just barely misses out of the top 10. And do I really have to say why I put Shawn Michaels, I guess, in my top 13, but not top 10? He's probably the greatest wrestler all around that's ever lived. exception of my number one and number two, except with the exception of my top 10. My top 10, let me explain. These are guys that I just enjoyed watching, and I could watch their matches over and over again. Shawn Michaels, I could watch his matches constantly. Some of them. His earlier work when he was with AWA and first coming into WWE with the Rockers, I can't do it because they worked against guys that couldn't work that style. They were slower paced guys, so it just looks one-sided. So Shawn Michaels, he's my third honorable mention. Number 10, once again, a lot of people are going to be surprised he's not higher up on this list. The Texas Rattlesnake, the Bionic Redneck, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Once again, what could I say that hasn't been said about Stone Cold? I liked Stone Cold stuff when he was working WCW as Stunning Steve Austin. And there's a guy in this business right now, wrestling for the NWA, that reminds me of a mix of Stunning Steve Austin and Mr. Perfect. And that's Eli Drake. Yeah. Sorry, I had to throw the Eli Drake gimmick out there, but go watch Eli Drake on NWA Power if you get a chance. But Stone Cold Steve Austin, it's the promos. It's the attitude. It's the fact that the man beat the living piss out of his boss every day and made Vince's life miserable. What else can you say? I mean, who hasn't want to beat the tar out of their boss? At least once. Everybody's had a boss that they absolutely want to punch in the freaking face. I know I have. But Stone Cold, a beer-swilling, foul-mouthed, hand-gesturing redneck. Not to mention, he was tougher than a $2 steak. I mean, when he broke his neck in 97, he didn't get surgery for it until 99. So he basically wrestled for 2 years with a broken neck. And I mean, that's tough. I mean, when he broke his neck, he got up and finished the match. That's tough. I'm sorry. You can say it's stupid, but it's tough. Some people would just tap out and quit and retire at that point. So, and favorite Stone... oh, wait. I forgot to mention my favorite Shawn Michaels match. Sorry. Once I get used to this, I won't have to go back and go forward. Favorite Shawn Michaels match. Oh, God. There's a lot of them. If I was going to direct somebody who's never seen Shawn Michaels before to the perfect Shawn Michaels match, it would have to be Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 21 back in 2005. Both guys put on a terrific match. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to have to make a change. Somebody's going to have to come out of this list. So he's going to be moved to an honorable mention. I'll come back to him right now, and that is Mr. Monday Night, Mr. Pay-Per-View, the whole effing show, Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam, his in-ring style, tremendous. The way, the high flyer, the striking, it's so much to see. You can't blink because he's so acrobatic, you'll miss it. He's such a crazy athlete. Not to mention he's 420 friendly, which is awesome too. And he cuts a great promo. You'd never know it if you'd only seen his work in WWE, because he rarely ever cut a full-length promo that was actually him, saying words other than whatever, cool, and dude. They paint him as a stereotypical laid-back stoner. So yeah, he's an honorable mention. Now let me move to my number 9. The Icon. WWE for some reason called him the Vigilante. The man called Sting. This guy, who started off in a tag team with a guy who's considered one of the worst workers, but even with that bad work rate in the ring, was able to captivate fans worldwide once he hit WWE, and that was Ultimate Warrior. Yes, Ultimate Warrior and Sting were once tag partners in the territory days known as the Blade Runners. God, neither one of them was good back then. Sting had something. He had potential, and it wasn't until he went to WCW that he really unlocked his potential. And he evolved over time. You never got sick of Sting. By the time people were getting to that point where they were just going to get ready to get sick of the, bleach blonde crew cut Sting, what does he do? He grows his hair out and lets it be its natural color, which is brown or black, I believe. It's brown, or he made it dyed it black. He probably dyed it black at some point, but it's brown. So it changed just a little bit. He kept the colorful face paint, but went to dark tights. And then when people started to get sick of that a little bit, what does he do? He leaves for a little while, and he comes back in the gimmick, and everybody thinks of when they think of Sting, the black and white crow paint, to be the beacon of light for WCW against the NWO. Then, what does he do? He joins the NWO Wolfpack, gives up the white and black paint, goes for black and red paint, and becomes a little more colorful and a little more himself, a little more goofy, a little bit with the NWO Wolfpack. And then he goes back to the Crow Sting, but a little less mysterious and just more raw. He kind of mixed all of them together after the NWO Wolfpack went away. He kind of put them all together. And then, WCW closes. He goes away. No, he's not seen in the United States. Everybody wanted him to come to WWE because everybody had that one fantasy match, and I have it too, and it's Sting and The Undertaker. If both of those guys were in their prime, it'd be a fantastic match, and little do people know they've actually faced each other when Undertaker worked in WCW as Mean Mark Callis. But it was a short match, and Undertaker wasn't that good yet. So, but that's the fantasy match everybody wants to see. Undertaker, the dead man against Sting. I'd love to see it if both of them were in their prime and could go like they used to. It'd be amazing. But now, really, the only way we could see it the way it needs to be done is in the video games. But he goes to TNA. It's the same thing as he was when WCW folded. It's pretty much the same thing. And it kind of stays that way. He just makes little changes to the paint or to his attire, to his gear. Then the gimmick a lot of people love, Joker Sting, which is where he took like the goofiness of Wolfpack Sting and went Joker level with it. It was shortly after Heath Ledger's version of the Joker was done. I mean, he even did his paint Joker-esque, and it was just so entertaining. Comes WWE, gets buried by Triple H, and then gets hurt by Seth Rollins. I think what they should have done with his return, one, don't have him lose his first match in the company. Two, it shouldn't have been against Triple H. If it was going to be against anybody that's not an Undertaker, it should have been against somebody like, I don't know, Cena. Him and Cena would have been a good match. Bring Rock back to face Sting, Icon versus Icon. Something like that. Don't have him lose. I think they should have let him have a run with the freaking title. That's my opinion. But that's Sting. He was so captivating, and you always wanted to be behind him. I've never seen him work heel, even when he was technically working heel in TNA as a part of the Main Event Mafia. People still cheered him. Moving on to number 8. Originally, Rob Van Dam was my number 8. I moved him down because when I was talking about Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold match. Once again, sorry. Stone Cold match. Stone Cold, Rock, WrestleMania 17. Or any of their matches, really. Anytime Rock and Stone Cold went one-on-one, great matches. Favorite Sting match. I would have to say, actually I have it written down here. Sting versus Flair for the NWA World title at Great American Bash 1990. It was actually Sting's first world title win. That's the best Sting match I could recommend. Moving to number 8, once again, I brainstormed who I wanted to put here instead of Rob Van Dam when I was talking about Shawn Michaels and mentioning the match between him and Kurt Angle. It's Kurt Angle. I mean, even if you don't like him, you have to respect how accomplished he is. Sorry, I gotta move around here. Sorry. You gotta really respect how accomplished he is, not only in professional wrestling, but in freestyle wrestling. In the Olympics, he's a 1996 gold medalist, and the line saying he won it with a broken neck, that's no gimmick. That is true. He did have a broken neck, you could say, a serious neck injury that is considered a broken neck when he won the gold medal. How much tougher and dedicated can you get? And Kurt Angle, of course, took to the wrestling business like a fish to water. I mean, he was a natural. Anybody who knows him says he was a natural from day one. And he could do babyface. He could do heel. He can do comedy. He can be funny. I mean, I go think back to the time when Stone Cold had turned heel back in 2001. And along with Vince McMahon, Kurt Angle was aligned with them. It was during or like right before the invasion angle started. And I just remember, oh God, freaking Kurt Angle got himself Stone Cold and Vince 10-gallon cowboy hats. Vince and Stone Cold were normal. Kurt Angle pulls out one of those little kids' cowboy hats that's made of straw with the string. And it says Yippee-Ki-Yay. And I bust out laughing because it was funny but stupid. So Kurt Angle, because of his in-ring ability, his range as in charisma as a heel, babyface, comedy heel, comedy babyface, whatever. That's why I've got him. I moved him to my number 8 best Kurt Angle match. I don't want to mention the Shawn Michaels match, but I would have to say best Kurt Angle match. Best Kurt Angle match that I could think of that isn't at WrestleMania 21. I would have to say the triple threat match he was involved in at WrestleMania 22 with Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton for the world title. That's the next best thing to me. Next on the list, number 7, speaking of, is Rey Mysterio. I think the main reason I like watching him is the main reason anybody likes watching him. Because of what he can do in the ring. It's insane how innovative Rey Mysterio is. And the fact that he's been wrestling since he was 14, 15 years old is insane. And the fact that he's still going, and now that his son Dominic is training. It's insane. You know, going from Mexico to Japan to ECW to WCW to WWE, and then leaving WWE, going all across the independents, Lucha Underground, and all those other places, and then finally coming back. Thank God, because we need a Rey Mysterio. I still think they need to, before he retires, they need to give him a world title run, one more, because the last one he had in WWE wasn't worth it because he lost to Cena in the span of maybe 30 minutes to an hour when he won his last world title. And best Rey Mysterio match, I would have to say Halloween Havoc 97, Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. It's a fantastic match. Number 6, Flying Brian Pillman, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He passed away in 1997. I don't remember the cause. His son does wrestle, Brian Pillman Jr. He is in the business. He's pretty good too. But Brian Pillman, I liked his work when he was tag team with Steve Austin at WCW as the Hollywood Blondes. But where Pillman really showed was the loose cannon thing. Because you couldn't tell whether it was a work or a shoot. I looking back and watching that stuff, somebody seeing it for the first time could really believe he's freaking crazy. Or he was crazy. And a lot of people say that he really was crazy to that point. But of course his work was impeccable. I've gone back and watched his match that he had a match with Ric Flair. It's not the match I'd recommend for perfect Pillman match. You really can't pick one perfect Pillman match, but I'll try to my best. Um, but it was a great match. Um, so he's my number 6. Recommending a match to see Pillman in. I believe it was the first episode of Monday Nitro. I think that was where it was, but I know his opponent was Jushin Thunder Liger. Good God, those guys put on a great match. It's insane. Number 5, Mick Foley, Dude Love, Cactus Jack, Mankind, whatever you want to call him. He's in my top 5 because of how tough he is and his range when it comes to being to the characters. How many other wrestlers do you know could not only have 4 different characters if you include him being his real self, Mick Foley, let alone going through all 3 of those characters in the span of one Royal Rumble match. Royal Rumble 98, I believe it was. He starts off as Cactus Jack. He gets eliminated. A little bit later, he comes back as Dude Love. Gets eliminated again. A little bit later, comes back in again as Mankind. Who else could do that? Nobody. Dude loves his oldest character. He was doing that before he even got in the wrestling business, when he was just jumping off the roof of his house. Cactus Jack, I still think is his most famous character because it was the only character he did in other places other than WWE. He did it in WCW, World Class, Japan, everywhere he went. He was known as Cactus Jack until he hit WWE. But so that's why Mick's my number 5. My number 4, another one that's not with us, Owen Hart. I still think he was the greatest wrestler in the Hart family. I'm sorry for those of you who think Bret was the best one. No, it was Owen. Because even when Owen and Bret faced each other, Owen outperformed Bret every single time. I think Owen Hart is the greatest wrestler to never hold a world title. Never has. I don't even remember if he's had a shot at it. And, he was, again, of course, being a member of the Hart family, he was a natural anyway. It was in his blood. And he worked great as a heel. He was a natural heel. He was a natural prick in character. But when you hear the stories about how nice of a guy he was and how much he loved playing jokes or ribs, as it's called in the business, on people in the back, you still love him. And, unfortunately, he died in an accident in 1999 under the Blue Blazer character he had. He was supposed to be lowered by a cable to the ring. And in gimmick, he was supposed to fumble with it and fall probably just a foot or two off the ground. What happened was the safety latch on that cable broke, and he fell far. I believe it was he hit his throat on the ropes, and I believe he died before they can get him to the hospital. I didn't watch it live back then, but I remember watching it years later and watching Jim Ross deliver the message that Owen Hart had passed away in the middle of the show. Even though I knew Owen had passed away back then, it was heart-wrenching. Just looking into Jim Ross's eyes and watching him deliver the news to the people watching at home that Owen Hart was gone. And it was almost in shock. You could tell that the fans and everybody was in shock. And they did finish the show, which a lot of people think was a bad idea, but a lot of people who were close to Owen said Owen would have wanted it to go on because he loved wrestling that much. Best Owen Hart match. Sorry to get a little emotional there, but when it comes to wrestlers like Owen, when I found out he had died the Monday after, I didn't cry immediately, but when I saw during the tribute, Stone Cold comes out, toasts a beer to that picture Owen Hart that was on the Titantron. I cried. I cried a little bit. I cried a lot, actually. Just because that's when it hit that he was really gone. First, I thought it was. I actually thought it was a storyline. I was 4 years old. What did I know? But perfect Owen Hart match. I'd have to say. I would have to say it's the match he had with Brett in the steel cage. I believe it was at SummerSlam. I don't remember what year, but that would be it. Number 3. Excuse me. Number 3. Well, how else could I introduce this man? Except with one word. Woo! The Nature Boy, Ric Flair. I probably caught a little audio distortion on that woo. But Ric Flair. How can you hate Ric Flair? A lot of people call him the Babe Ruth of wrestling. Kinda, yeah. He's like the Babe Ruth of wrestling. I mean, he does a lot of the same stuff every time, but it's always entertaining. He's the dirtiest player in the game. Even when he's working as a babyface, he'll still hit low blows. He'll poke his opponent in the eye. That kind of. He'll use closed fists, but it's entertaining to watch him. His promos, though, oh my God, watching him get mad delivering a promo and then doing things like taking his suit jacket off and dropping an elbow on it in the middle of the ring. That's entertaining. Best Ric Flair match. Wow. I would have to say any match he had with Dusty Rhodes, pick one. Or if you want something more specific, I'd say go with Starrcade 80. I believe it was the first Starrcade when he was going up against then world champion Harley Race. Great match. Number 2. It's going to get somber again, so bear with me. And my number 2 is a controversial pick, Chris Benoit. You know, I don't like how Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel's lives came to an end. I don't like what he did. But as an in-ring competitor, how can you not give him his props as how good he was in the ring? If you've never watched a Chris Benoit match, I'm going to give you 2 matches for Chris Benoit and for my number 1 pick to go watch. Chris Benoit, it's been said he loved the business. That's all he ever knew was wrestling. Didn't really have any other job beforehand. And every match he did that I've seen, I could tell he was given no less than 110% to make sure that every fan went home happy. Damn computer. I'm sitting on my floor, so I got to maneuver a lot to stay comfortable. But and he could work. He could make you laugh even on occasion, even though he was mostly in pure intense, rabid Wolverine in the ring, because that's what he was. I want to quote Taz, who was on commentary: "No fear, no intimidation. That's the Wolverine. That's Chris Benoit." And that's true. And he was considered to be a smaller guy, which sucks. Because if he wasn't considered to be a small guy, he would have had multiple world title reigns throughout his entire career. And when I found out Chris Benoit died, this was even before the details came out, cried like a baby. Oh, I was so upset. Because it didn't feel real when that came on the news that Chris Benoit was gone. And then when I heard the news of the details of how he, killed his wife and his son and then himself, I was mad. I didn't want to like him anymore. And then, but I couldn't help it. Going back and watching his matches, I was always entertained. I could go back and watch any Chris Benoit match at any point in time and be entertained. You know, and a lot of people still vilify him, which, you know, I'm not saying you should praise, you should sing his praises all the time, but don't focus on what happened at the end, because it's come out and said that he had CTE. You know, he had an issue with his brain. I mean, when his brain was examined, the ME said that he had the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. It was that diminished. Not to mention that when the tragedy happened, there was alcohol involved. That diminishes your brain ever so much more. So even though he was more than likely blacked out when it happened, and you know, that's the way I see it. He was blacked out, didn't realize what was going on until after the fact, and it's just a shame that not only he's gone, but his son Daniel and Nancy, who I talked about on my last video as one of my top 10 managers, are gone, and now the fact that him and Nancy will never be in the Hall of Fame. Chris Benoit will probably never be put into another WWE video game. He probably won't ever get mentioned on the air ever again. Neither will Nancy. And Nancy's, you know, basically a bystander in it, and they're basically keeping her out of it so people don't talk about how her life ended, because it would just putting Benoit in the Hall of Fame. I think on this Viceland documentary with the tragedy, I can't remember who said it, but they said that it would be too much of a distraction from the good that they're doing by putting him in the Hall of Fame and, you know, immortalizing him forever because of what he did would be too much of a distraction, which is true. I completely agree. But, you know, it sucks. But the true fans who watched him when he was alive or still watch him now and find him entertaining will never forget. The two Chris Benoit matches. One of them has to be WrestleMania 20, the night he won the world title for the first time and the only time, when it was Chris Benoit versus Shawn Michaels versus the world champion at the time, Triple H. Beautiful match. The other Chris Benoit match, I told you for the top two, I'm giving you two matches instead of one. The number one Chris Benoit match, another Chris Benoit match is, I would have to say Royal Rumble 2003 when he faced Kurt Angle for the WWE title. Tremendous match. Any match him and Benoit and Angle had was always going to be great because they both were workhorses, similar styles. Number one, this is the one that even today I have a hard time praising how much I enjoyed watching this guy. Because his passing hit me harder than anybody else on this list. Eddie Guerrero. Latino Heat. What can I say that hasn't been said about Eddie? I mean, first of all, Eddie Guerrero had that infectious smile. You know, he smiles, and even if he was a heel, you know, Eddie's going to cheat. He's going to cheat. You know, and of course his work ethic, his in-ring ability was uncanny. But you get that when you come from a wrestling family. I could say the same things about him that I said all the good I said about guys like Benoit, Owen, all those guys, Pillman, all of them. They work great. His charisma. I mean, he lies, he cheats, he steals. That's the motto. And his influence is still felt today in the business. The two Eddie Guerrero matches, I would have to say it's another WrestleMania 20 match, him against Kurt Angle. And I already mentioned one match he was already in when I mentioned the go-to Rey Mysterio match. But another Guerrero match. Uh, mm, it's hard picking one. It's hard picking one. I would have to say the match that he and Edge had on SmackDown, the ladder match. Beautiful match. You may, and so that's my top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time. You may be wondering why I didn't mention any women. That's going to be a separate list for another time. Um, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This video is a little bit longer than most of my videos have been, just because a lot of these people that I had so much to say about them. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank the subscribers I have, the viewers I have, for watching my content and putting me out there and help me get seen. Even though I'm not good at this, I'm still not comfortable in front of the camera. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And like I've said, I say it almost every time. Like, subscribe, share, favorite the videos, give me comments. Share it. Get me out there. Help me out. I eventually want to get to the point where I could even have merch and do gaming and stuff like that too. So, have a nice day, everybody.